Hey, how's it going everybody? Shaggy from the Order of Mithril here, and today we're going to do a random review of Ori and the Blind Forest, and with me today is Daneisha.
Hello.
So one of the great things about Ori and the Blind Forest is it may not be an overly complicated story, but the narrative that it provides is absolutely amazing. It's not a traditional story in the sense that you're not dealing with a damsel in distress, you're not dealing with an opposing military faction or anything like that. So it was a welcome change of pace for me whenever I was playing through it. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that Moon Studios did an amazing job with the story for this game, and I really enjoyed how they continued it over to the next game, but that's another topic for another video. So what did you think about the story for this one, Daneisha?
I thought it was absolutely stunning. They did really well. It was really thought out. It didn't feel forced or like it was too drawn out. I felt like the narrative and the length of everything was really like spot on, and they couldn't have done it better.
So one of the things that's going to immediately catch everybody's attention about this title is its unique style. The way that it looks is not very common for games out there right now, which I thoroughly enjoyed that. The fact that it was unique, but not just in its uniqueness as a whole, but just like the little things that they did. Like, for instance, in this shot right here, you can see that Ori and the flowers and the tree all have a certain luminescence to them, which I think makes the image pop just a little bit more. Without that luminescence around those things, it wouldn't have been as impactful, and I enjoyed that about it. Even other little things, like the way that it all looks like it's oil painted, and it's done to a field of depth too. As you can see, you play in the foreground, but the background tells a little bit of a story about the environment as you progress through the game, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and found myself just stopping at certain points to look at what's going on in the entirety of the image. And then on top of that, as you go through certain parts of the game, you have things in more of the foreground than what you actually play on, which gives it another field of depth to it. But what did you think about like the art and the graphics for the game, Daneisha?
It was absolutely stunning. I think the artists who developed this game did an amazing job. Like you said, everything's kind of like an oil painting, and I love that there's not a single spot that you can't stop in the game that isn't a work of art. Everything is so beautiful, so eye-catching, and it's just really gorgeous.
Another thing that really stood out for me in this title is the audio mix. I love the music. It can be dramatic, it can be upbeat, it can be kind of giving you that sense of terror. I think that the full orchestra set that they did throughout the entirety of the game was absolutely splendid. But even more than just the music that you can hear and the different areas of the world that you're going to adventure through and the cinematic pieces that you're going to experience is the way Ori sounds. Just that little bit of a chirp or a grunt, it sets itself up to lend that Ori is fragile. She's not a superhero. You're not stepping into the boots of a Spartan from Halo whenever you play this character. And even beyond that, the way that the characters talk, it's almost kind of got a Charlie Brown-esque vibe to it, as in you can't really understand them, and that's why you need the subtitles, if you will. But another thing is even the way that things in the environment sound, like parts of the puzzles or the traps that you're going to encounter, the enemies that you're going to fight, they all sound very unique. They have a distinction about them that is really nice and easy to differentiate between one from the next. But thinking about the audio, what did you think about the game, Daneisha?
The music stood out to me the most, and also the narrator itself, the story that goes along and kind of gives you each piece of what you're going through. I thought that the entire mix really works well together. It really does its job of showing you like when there is danger around or when things are not going the right way that they should be. You really get to feel the emotions that come from every little bit of audio within the game.
When it comes down to the gameplay for this one, it satisfies two old cravings that I have and that I've had since I started playing video games. It's a platformer, which you can obviously tell by the way that the world is constructed, the way you're supposed to travel through it from point A to point B to the different biomes and areas that you can explore. But another thing about it is that it is a Metroidvania as well. And the reason it's like that is because as you go through, you'll find these trees that have other spirits dwelling within them that give you new abilities, like being able to double jump or being able to climb up walls, things like that. That'll give you the ability to go back to areas that you've already been through and explore them further and find other secrets or other paths to destinations that you have already been to or haven't quite made it to yet. So I feel that that's a very good gameplay loop. It gives you the chance to really explore the world. You don't feel like you're on a linear path whenever you play a Metroidvania. Maybe you are a little bit in the beginning because you don't have all the abilities unlocked, but as the game progresses, it becomes much more open for you. And I honestly feel that Metroidvanias were some of the games that set the mold for what we now have as open world games today. But even the old platformer element I thoroughly enjoy because it involves itself not in just how you see the world, but how you interact with it, because you are going to have to avoid traps and puzzles, and it can come into play whenever you're battling with enemies, even in the boss areas that you have to deal with at times. So I really enjoyed both of these points of the gameplay, and I don't think it could have been done any better for the type of game that it is. What did you think about the gameplay for this one?
I 100% agree with you on that. I'm not your typical platform gamer. It's never something that's really kind of stuck out to me. I think my first game wasn't even a platform game, but this is something that really stuck with me, and I was able to get through it and complete it. And I think I played it a whole weekend because it was just such a great game that I could not put down. And I never expected that out of a platformer or was it Metromania?
Metroidvania.
Metroidvania, okay. So I agree with you. It could not have been done better. I think this was the perfect setup for the way that they wanted to do this game. I think it was executed beautifully, and it's, it made me happy.
And while we're on the topic of gameplay, there are two other points that I wanted to make a specific note of when it comes to this game: the difficulty and the replayability. Now when it comes to difficulty, you can change from easy, normal, and hard on there, but I think that the game in itself scales very well just playing through on normal, and if you did want to play through on hard mode, you could for more of a challenge, and that's completely okay. But when it comes down to this, you're going to be dealing with puzzles, and sometimes those puzzles involve enemies, sometimes they involve environmental hazards, and abilities, and your mastery of how to use them. And the difficulty just sits very well. It scales properly from beginning to end, which I think is really hard for games, or most of the games out there, to do nowadays, because it's either a pretty linear difficulty all the way from beginning to end, or it has its peaks and valleys throughout the title. This one is on a constant rise from the moment that it starts, but it's not a dramatic rise from beginning to end. I think it sits very well in that. And now when it comes to the replayability for the title, yeah, it's basically a game you're going to play through it once. You're going to know where a lot of the secrets are from the time you start up your second playthrough, and that's perfectly fine. But the narrative is very good. The difficulty, like I said, is very well. You can even upgrade the difficulty to make it a little bit harder for yourself if you want to go through it, on hard for your second playthrough. But the puzzles, the environments, and everything working together makes it an enjoyable playthrough, even on your second, third, or fourth replay of the title. So I think it has high replayability. But what did you think about the difficulty and the replayability for this one?
So as someone who is not a hardcore gamer, honestly the game was a little bit hard for me on normal, but I'm not very skilled and I don't critically think, and I'm kind of a button masher. So it took a lot of, recalibrating for my brain and how I play games, and I was 100% okay with that because it was something that I got to enjoy. There were a couple of parts that I needed to enlist in your help. But even still, with me getting frustrated at my own inability to do something, it was a game that I couldn't put down. And going off of replayability, it's a linear storyline, sure, but at the end of the day, you might not find all the secrets. And I remember my first playthrough, I went through and I got it done, and then after I was finished, I went through and I found every single nook and cranny of the map that I might have missed. And then even going back in on my second and third time go around, I feel like I'm still seeing new stuff, even though I really haven't. It's just such a beautiful game.
Now, when it comes down to my traditional rating for games, I think this one's pretty much a no-brainer. When it comes to pass, wait, or must-play, this one is definitely a must-play. Moon Studios knocked it out of the park in every category with this one. This is one of those games that I think kind of sets up the era of gaming that it came out in. If you talk about an Xbox One in the future and you don't mention Ori and the Blind Forest, I think you're doing yourself and the Xbox a disservice. I love this title, and I cannot wait to see what Moon Studios does in the future. I think that they're going to be a studio to watch for every project that they put out from here until they're done. But what did you think about, was it a wait to play, a pass, or a must play for you?
Definitely a must play. I even procrastinated on it back then, and I remember fighting you and getting so frustrated with me about it. But once I actually sat down and played it, I mean, I cried. I was so invested in the game. So I think everybody should pick it up and play it.
Well, that's the random review for Ori and the Blind Forest. Me and the rest of the Order of Mithril greatly appreciate you stopping by the channel today, and I'm sure that Monkey here appreciates it as well. Hope you guys come back for more stuff in the future. Hope you guys have a good one.
Bye.